What's going on, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football. That's my best Rod Babers impression right there. But I'm CJ Vogel. Welcome back to the winning drive. Nice little Thursday afternoon winning drive. We got Jeff Howe in the building with us in place of Rod Babers. And, of course, the coach from Rotan, Burnett Capel. Coach, I'm missing a few, so forgive me. But we're that close to the weekend, folks. And Coach,
I was hoping for once, with Rod gone, we wouldn't have to go through all that today.
we only got a couple of them.
Yeah.
Only a couple of them today. But no, we got some news coming out of Austin, Texas today. Of course, we had some news last night that we'll get to with the new running back hire, Chad Scott, coming from West Virginia, as well as some players perhaps to keep an eye on. We'll talk a little bit about spring football coming up as well. But we have to start with the news coming from Steve Sarkisian today about the spring game. And I know that's been a topic of conversation in terms of would we see one? Would it be full pads? Would you see it in terms of the way that we've seen an orange and white game previously as well? Well, he sat down with Kay Adams earlier today and basically said there won't be a spring game. You know, they're going to do things a little bit differently this year. Of course, that means in Sark's eyes, it's going to be a little bit more towards an NFL OTA style of offseason. So that's certainly up front on top of the docket here. News here. We've kind of been anticipating that over here at On Texas Football. But now that it is official, Coach, let me get your thoughts on that in the sense that, hey, we've talked about it. We've theorized it, whether it be for poaching reasons, whether it would just be for health. But at the end of the day, no spring game means no chance for the fans to come out, see the next batch of talent and youngsters about 4 or 5 months before the start of the season.
Yeah. First of all, I was just wondering, is there a possibility? Do you guys think that I know you don't know, but what would you think about the possibility of him opening up a practice in the stadium for just random practice?
I would think it's likely, at least once.
Yeah, I think that would kind of be a win-win. You know, at least give the fans an opportunity to see the guys in action and kind of check out the new coaches and the new players. But I think it's really smart, and it's it's a shame that the movement kind of comes from Nebraska, but I think it's really smart. It's the coaches have already seen pretty much what they need to see, throughout the practice. Good grief, the season didn't end that long ago, and so it's just a little bit overkill to me. It's a opportunity, one less opportunity for somebody to get hurt, because guys sometimes would obviously be going harder and maybe take more risk in front of stadium and probably something that could be on TV as well, because most of them are, on TV. So, and I think it takes some pressure off the coaching staff, you don't have to have the team completely ready by the end of spring ball for next season. And so you can experiment a little more, get the new coaches kind of give them a little breathing room in terms of, not feeling like everything has to be in and done at the end of the spring training. But I like that more off-season OTA approach. I mean, it's just I think it's a smart move. A lot of people may not like that because they like the atmosphere of, having with CDC kind of making it almost a game day like deal, and it's fun. It's like a carnival, to go out and see a little football on a 70-degree afternoon or whatever. But well, it's just Texas. There's no telling what we would see there. But I like the move. I think it's going to be beneficial for the team.
Yeah, it's new, and of course we're now seeing the first adoption of, I guess, widespread no spring game, because I think Oklahoma State's been a school that's not fully gone through the spring on a year in, year out basis. Jeff, I'll ask you this. I mean, Coach went through it for a coaching standpoint, in which we'll get to with all this turnover coming in on the position staff group. But more so than that, with this young group of freshmen coming in, the number one freshman class, is this not a little counterintuitive to at least see what they can do with the bright lights? Or is it just, hey, the spring game's still a spring game, doesn't mean a whole lot until fall camp comes rolling around?
Yeah, I think the spring game, Coach Shipley just mentioned it. I think it's more for the fans, for the players' families, for Gen Pop. And Is it a TV product? That's certainly debatable. But it's not the greatest evaluation tool for the coaches. It is, but I think Sark would tell you he'd probably get more work from just going behind closed doors and having a normal, 23, 24 period practice where they can really teach and really dig into it. I think I just go back to, bringing in the new hires he's brought in, specifically Alan Clark and Mark Bay. I think there's a focus now for Sark on bringing in guys that are really good teachers. In the NIL era, Texas is, and when you think about it, Texas has not had, relative to other schools, a talent acquisition problem. They've been able to get players. You're the University of Texas. You're always going to get players. We're just seeing Sark get more top-end players that have NFL ceilings than that we've seen in the past decade. You're not in the NIL area. You're not going to have a talent acquisition problem. This program can't afford to take a step back where it suddenly has a player development problem. That's something that Sark has fixed. They've remedied it. They've got a system that works. So I think just continuing to me at this point, at this time in college football, hiring somebody that's a really good teacher outweighs hiring somebody that is a quote unquote rainmaker on the recruiting trail. Having guys with regional ties, I think, is more important than having that one guy that's like, oh, we'll put him on so-and-so, who'll go get him. Because when you have Justice Terry come out and say, yeah, Texas had a better NIL package, that's why I'm going there instead of Georgia. That's just the name of the game right now. So, but to answer the question, CJ, yeah, I really think it's more about maximizing those 15 practices. And, Coach Shipley, you've been doing this long enough. Spring game, you're going to be bland. You're not going to show anything that you don't want anybody to see. I just feel like it'd be a better work day. And I think Sark thinks that if they just went behind closed doors, if they open to practice, it's probably, some kind of t-shirts and shorts practice, maybe a shells with some thud. But I think it would be a day where you're more so working kind of fundamentals and technique rather than install.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I was going to go with that for my next point, because I had heard about 3 or 4 days ago, it was unlikely Texas goes full pads for any of its 15 practices. Now, again, that leans more towards Texas, maybe leaning towards keeping these cats a little healthier, maybe a little less mileage on their legs. Of course, you're going to have a couple guys returning from injury. Derek Williams, the running backs, Christian Clark, CJ Baxter, but Colton Vasek as well is kind of up in the air and whether or not he'll be on the field at all. So to take off the pads and just say, hey, we're not going to hit. We're going to preserve our bodies for the summer, preserve our bodies for next fall. Just go out there, learn the installations of the schemes, and compete in shells. I think that's a smart move. On top of that, look, it's only been 41 days since this team ended its season. And to the comments that we've seen, I mean, they played 16 games. That's a full NFL schedule, and that's only about a month and a half removed, expecting to be back on the field in, about 30 days or so. That's a quick turnaround. So on top of what y'all were saying in terms of poaching, making sure that your roster remains your roster, you also got to make sure that these cats want to have the desire to come fall football, to come out to practice and learn. Because, Coach, I'm sure you've seen it. If you get too bought into the grind and you only make your life about going to football practice and then conditioning and then rehabilitation and whatnot, I mean, at some point you got to just say, I'd like a break, Like it's got to be some sort of wear down mentally for these kids that just don't otherwise get a whole lot of college life.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and one that shouldn't be discounted, because you want your guys to be in a good shape mentally, and emotionally, and and still have fun, and a lot of coaches are afraid to use that word, because the first time they lose a game, people start saying, oh, that's because you have too much fun. You're not serious enough. You're not grinding enough, and all that stuff. It is indeed a new age, because I have never in my life heard of a spring football when you can have several practices with full pads on with no tackling. I don't know that would actually happen. Maybe not taking them down to the ground. But I just don't think you learn how to tackle through thud. And that's the old school coach in me. some of these guys, they need to know what it feels like to stick your nose in some guy's chest and bring your arms and drive your legs and take them to the ground. I mean, as long as you're not doing that with, CJ Baxter wouldn't be ready to do that anyway, but as long as you're not doing it with one of the guys that's going to be toting the mail for us,
But how would you do that then? Because look, you have a Justice Terry, a 5-star guy, a Lance Jackson, even that you're expecting to be at some point in this conversation. Is it just, hey, just learn the script and we'll see what you can actually do in fall camp when we do go through these weekend scrimmages, or are you just anticipating these guys to come out ready to roll without truly knowing whether or not they can handle a Cam Williams level-esque or a DJ Campbell level-esque offensive lineman opposite of them?
Yeah, I think you keep it. I don't know that I would go a lot of live one-on-ones versus ones, but you've got to know if those guys are going to do it, if they're going to stick their nose in there and really do it. I remember back in the day, spring ball was a bloodbath. I mean, a bloodbath, and some coaches are that way. I'm thankful that it's a little, they've come a long way, and you use a little more common sense now than they used to. But I still think that Sark, man, the guys just come up every time, seems like with the right thing, especially the last couple of years. And so, again, we talk about this a lot. How far do you go? Where's that happy medium in there, where you're getting what you need, but you're not taking risk on hurting guys, because 16 game season is a long time. You need those guys to be fresh and be ready to go, and not be trying to recover from a surgery or a shoulder separation or whatever it is. And invariably those things are going to happen. I think it's just trying to find that right. And I think Sark and the staff will do that. I don't know what it will be. I hadn't talked to anybody up there. I don't know what they're thinking. I will probably at some point, but I like the direction we're going with it.
Yeah, I think this is one of those deals. And Coach, you can fill in the blanks, but I know, the UIL even in recent years, I'm probably, my last high school football season was 2001. I'm probably at the tail end of Texas high school football players that had actual 2-a-day practices. You go to one in the morning and you come to one in the afternoon or the evening. You just don't do that anymore. Now it seems like, there's nothing better, Coach. And there's guys can get too hyped up. There's nothing better than the first day of pads, right? Everybody just, if you do your Oklahoma drill or shotgun alley, whatever you call it, it's a great day. But, player safety has taken precedent at all levels. We've even seen in the UIL. Coach, when did you notice that change from, hey, this is the kind of the way we've always done it, to, all right, we're going to one practice a day, and maybe you walk through and we need to limit contact and all that stuff. When did you start seeing that change?
Yeah, I think it's been over the last 10 to 12 years, probably. We would, when I first became a head coach, we would do it the old-fashioned way. Well, because I was a head coach at Rotan, and we'd have practice early in the morning, those guys have to go out and hoe weeds in the cotton field. That's, I mean, the guys that I coached at Rotan, they would beg to come to practice, because almost every one of them, whether their dad had a farm or not, they worked. That's the only way they can make any money, is working for a farmer, and they would beg to be able to come to football practice. So that's a little bit different scenario. But then I remember even back in the days when we had 2 full big practices, and like you said, you'd come back in the evening after it cooled off. And then sometimes, you'd have guys that get lost and wouldn't come back up there. And so we'd have a practice early in the morning, then we'd have a break and watch film and give them a snack or whatever, kind of let them recover a little bit. And then you go out and you do the same thing again. And then it started tapering that off, and you come back and you go, okay, well, we're going to come inside, take a break, rehydrate, get a little something in your stomach, whatever, watch film. And then we're going to come out and we're going to have shorts and helmet special teams practice or something, and you didn't have the intensity. It was more of a teaching time because it was hotter, and and then it just pretty much, like you're saying, we're just going to have one longer practice, and it's going to be not all rah. It's going to be a lot of it. It looks like you're standing around, but you're doing a lot of teaching. Just making sure you have everything covered, every phase of the game. You hadn't left kids behind because you're going too fast, and you just methodically go through it that way, working to the season. And then we started, 10 years ago or more than that, having our 2-day, having all practices in the morning. And now a lot of schools are doing that. I thought it was incredible to do that. And SART does that now at the University of Texas, which I think actually Herm started it first, I think. Yeah. And it was actually a difficult thing for Herm to do because they had the teachers that they liked those players to have in classes that were football friendly teachers. Not that they gave not that they gave away grades, but they understood, and even back then, I remember one year, 2013, we played 2 Thursday night games that year. And so it's you have to have teachers that understand, that we played. I remember we played in I think we played in West Virginia one Thursday night, and by the time you get back, the sun's almost coming up, and so my point is, you had those teachers that the players that worked well with the players and understood their schedule, and so then when you change practice during the morning, I know I'm kind of getting off subject a little bit, but when you change the practice during the morning, all the good teachers that are tenured teachers that we like to have our athletes in, they don't teach afternoon. They just teach in the mornings.
They're back home.
So now all of a sudden you've got morning practice, so you got to have afternoon classes. You got a whole new set of teachers. And let me tell you, that was a real problem because a lot of those teachers were not athletic friendly, as athletic friendly as the other ones. And so anyway, you there's some things you had to go through with that, but the morning practice, just the whole way football has evolved to be more player friendly. It's a lot cooler. The kid and I love the working out in the morning because you get the guys' endorphins going. They start, they feel good. After you work out, you feel good, and then they can go to class and stuff. And instead of having to, get up in the morning and you were up playing video games till 1 and you got a class at 8. And you may make it, you may not. We had a great success rate academically with our guys going to class once we got all the kinks worked out. Anyway, that's trailing off a little bit, but we're talking about the evolving of football, and practice and things like that, which does relate to no spring game and spring practice philosophies, in my opinion.
Well, you're absolutely right, Coach, because it hasn't always been just a solely morning practice tenure, right? I remember when I was practicing 2014, 2015, and that was really the first switch was when Lovejoy at the time hired a brand new coaching staff. They said, okay, everything that we do is going to be more morning oriented until the season comes. And then obviously we'll have our practice after school as well. But in the summer, and especially towards fall camp, practice kicks off at 6:15 a.m. If you're not here, well, we're going to make some notes and you're going to have some disciplinary, what is it? Climbing the stadium rows, whatnot. Like there'll be something waiting there for you. But look, the coaches don't want to be out there in the heat all day either. So that's why you see so many indoor facilities being built inside the state of Texas as well. I know the bubble is currently, I guess awaiting a facelift as well. That's long overdue. But I would go out to Lake Travis practice, Austin Westlake practices every now and then. They'd be done before the sun even came up. And then those kids would go shower, kind of have another 45 minutes before first period even started. It's like, okay, these guys are waking up at 4 a.m. to get out here. But to the point, with the heat and all that, it makes sense for the spring when you start looking at the way that Texas is starting to schedule its spring season as well. Body preservation has to be at the forefront. Other thing I wanted to mention before we move on is, look, Clemson played until, December 24th, 25th? When?
Yeah, right before Christmas, yeah.
They played right until Christmas. Their spring ball starts up the last 2 days of February. Their spring game, which they're still having, is April 5th. So that whole month of March, is going to be their 15 practices. That's, again, a quick turnaround. They played in the ACC championship. They're only 2 games shy of what Texas had to do, and they had to do it in a smaller time frame on a per game, per day basis. So I think that's something that as this playoff continues to evolve, as you see college football continue to move, body preservation in the spring and going into the summer is going to be something that we continue to see. The one thing I will say, I'd like to see some sort of fan fest. You know how, like, Jeff, you're a big baseball guy. Every baseball team has a fan fest. The Rangers used to have it all the time up in Arlington. You know, they get like the little mini diamond out there. You go hit some wiffle balls. Players be signing autographs or be a speaker or something. Look, do that at DKR. Do that inside the bubble or something. Allow these kids to come out, watch them throw for about 30 minutes, sign autographs, have a band, have some alumni. You know, I saw the comment earlier, like, let's have a 7-on-7 with the alumni. I don't hate that, Jack Lala. Thank you for the super chat. But I think that would be a cool way to get the fan involvement at a high level, because this is a pretty cool, 2 or 3 weeks span in the spring when you hear about the updates and then you get to go see them, because it's a complete change from basketball, baseball, hockey season to, oh, shoot, we got football once again.
Coach Jackson strikes me as somebody kind of like Rod did for years. He might just keep a pair of cleats in the truck just in case he's driving by and sees a pickup game pop off. I know he's been doing the training thing and he's got the kids, but I bet you Jackson Shipley has a pair of cleats within arm's reach at all times.
I guarantee you, when he's training, he's out there running routes with him and stuff. I wouldn't want to try to cover that dude.
But CJ, you made a great point. As you know, the playoff is going to expand in 2026. So this is the last year of the 12 team, and if Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti at the Big Ten, if they have their way, I mean, this thing's going to get expanded to 14 or 16 or wherever it's going. As you keep expanding the playoff and you have more games, the traditional college offseason it's not conducive to the way the season schedule is unfolding. And it wasn't that long ago where, and I think you can, Sark, and I've heard other coaches talk about going to the OTA model. It wasn't that long ago where guys getting to campus, like for summer session 1, getting there right as soon as high school ended, that was a big deal. It used to just be, hey, when a couple days before camp started, you move into the dorm and show up. But now you got so many guys. Now it's almost like if you get there in June, you're late because you got so many guys enrolling early. I think you can have some kind of staggered model where you're not just, hey, you've got X amount of days to get in your 15 practices. It's, hey, we'll give you this time between, the February such and such arbitrary date and March such and such arbitrary date, and this is what you can do. And then from April to, May, you can do, but you got to work out the recruiting calendar. We talk about the players needing time off. Man, your assistant coaches need time off too. Those guys are on the road. They're coaching. They need to take vacations. They got families. So I think it's unfortunate that I think it's going to take either the conferences or whatever governing body is eventually overpower conference football to say, all right, this is the season structure. This is the off-season structure that we have to go to. And here's the recruiting calendar to go along with it, because it doesn't really work for anybody right now. It kind of works for the players. But Coach Shipley, I know you can look at that recruiting calendar and the practice and everything else. It's definitely not working out for the coaches right now.
Yeah.
No, especially when they expanded the official visits, and so you used to just have, official. In fact, back when Mac was at Texas, as you well know, you guys remember, they tried to put off all official visits until, the football banquet.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and remember, the football banquet was televised on LHN. The band was in there playing. I mean, it was a really big deal. The seniors were in tuxes, and it was a big deal. And they wanted all the recruits there to see that. And now the official visits are basically year round. Obviously, there's times they can't come in, but that's hard on coaches. Very hard on coaches, because 7 days a week, and it's not just 7 days a week. You're with those recruits or their parents until 10 or 11 o'clock at night, from breakfast at like 9 or whatever. It is a grind.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, if you're just joining us, since we've had a couple new faces inside the chat. No spring game this year for the Texas Longhorns. That will not be taking place. But to the conversation we just had, a lot of good reasons why. You can't have your players marketed and advertised as poachable pieces. You get to retain some of the health and kind of tread on your players' bodies as well. So hopefully they find something that gets the fans involved, get the guys out there. But because again, we all want to see Arch Man and throw the football. I think we can all agree on that. So, but before we move on to Chad Scott, the new Texas running backs coach hire, which happened late last night, Jeff, a quick word about our first sponsor today, Flat Creek Estate.
Yes, sir. Flat Creek Estate and Winery is raking in awards, and it's just a few minutes from the heart of Austin. 11 awards in 30 days for our friends over at Flat Creek, including a Double Gold Grand Reserve and the Texas Grand Reserve at the Houston Rodeo. Select bottles of the wines by Flat Creek are now available at your local Specs, so you can get a taste of what they're all about. Flat Creek Estate is also a gorgeous venue hosting events for the whole family all spring. Take in the eclipse next week with a bottle in hand and the winemaker's dinner. Also, eat, drink, be awesome at Flat Creek Estate. For more info, visit flatcreekestate.com. And as Rod has mentioned a time or two, we've had a member of the On Texas football family have an engagement at Flat Creek. The wineries, the vineyards, they're popping off all over the place, but not only the venue, but you get some great award-winning wine from our friends over at Flat Creek Estate and Winery.
I think they need to use us for the next commercial.
Yeah.
Use the OTF staff and have us, slow motion frolicking around out and, butterflies and
all dressed in white, coach, with a couple wine screens across the top.
Oh yeah.
Look, I'm thinking that eclipse, that's the time to do it. Get us out there.
That's right. That's right.
That commercial, whoever did that for Flat Creek was amazing because that's
great. Yeah, that's it. That's what I'm talking about. Can you see Bobby walking around with one of those?
Which one, coach? The robe, the glass, or the pipe?
All of it.
I'm more focused on that smoking jacket than the big old wine glass.
No, they do a great job. It's a great product, and their commercials are on point.
Yeah,
great job.
Well, that's a good deal. Getting back to the regular scheduled part of this show, Texas did hire Chad White, or is expected to hire Chad Scott, from West Virginia last night to be the next running backs coach. Of course, Tashard Choice took the job with the Detroit Lions. Jeff, I'll go to you first. I mean, this is a guy that's been at West Virginia since 2019, rose all the way up to interim head coach this past year when Neil Brown was let go. West Virginia likes to run the football 2 years in a row of back-to-back, or I guess two running backs in back-to-back years of backs with 750 yards or more. What are your big takeaways from the hiring and how that might help the recruiting territories, but also development?
Yeah, you weren't going to find somebody that checked all the boxes that Tashard Choice checked, but I feel like Chad Scott checks enough of them. You think about it, he was done as a player in 2004 at North Carolina. 3 years later, he's the running backs coach at Troy. He's 26 when he gets his first, FBS coaching job. So he's 43, but he's a seasoned 43. I think that's the perfect blend of youth and experience that we talked, hey, is Sark going to go with youth or experience? Hey, you got two birds with one stone, killed two birds with one stone hiring Chad Scott. I just like the fact that, the biggest thing I think he's going to bring to the table. Yes, he's got recruiting ties in the state of Florida. And CJ, I know you've gotten into that. But I love the fact that when you look at Neil Brown's offense, West Virginia didn't have the best win-loss record of West Virginia, but you look at what he's done. Neil Brown's an air raid guy, but he ends up running the football as good as and effectively and efficiently as anybody in the country once they got it rolling at West Virginia. And you look at what he did at Troy and even at Texas Tech when he was there with Tommy Tuberville. They use so many different guys as blockers in that offense. It's a lot of deception. They'll use fullbacks, they'll use sniffers, they'll use inline tight ends. It's a lot of motions and shifts. They'll throw some different things at you. And I just think in a year where you're breaking in new starters on the offensive line, 4 new starters, really kind of 3.5 with Cole Hudson moving to center. But I think we get the point. You're breaking in a lot of new faces on the offensive line. What's the running back room going to look like? CJ Baxter's health. When's he going to be running up to an optimum level? Assuming Christian Clark's going to get back at some point, but I wouldn't count on him this year because that Achilles injury is a really tough one for guys to come back from. So what's the makeup of your running back room going to look like? How do you incorporate smartly incorporate Arch Manning's running ability in the offense. I think bringing in a guy like Chad Scott, who knows Neil Brown's run game inside and out, he can help you get the most out of kind of those complementary pieces, a Nick Townsend, a Jordan Washington, Michael Terry III, those guys so that way you don't have to just rely, hey, let's just force a square peg into the round hole. We'll just be a 12 personnel offense and go try to match people. No, you can have some diversity in your run game. And in a year where you really need it, hiring Jason McIndoe as an analyst and bringing in Chad Scott as your running backs coach, I think those two guys are getting to Texas right at the perfect time when this run game, and not that it needs to be completely overhauled, but it does need some tweaks. And I think those guys can bring you the kind of tweaks that you need.
CJ, got to ask you a question. Chad Scott, Jaheim Scott. I mean, are we getting things kind of what are you thinking there, bud?
Look, I'm trying to put too many names and faces that I haven't yet fully mastered yet, Coach. But yeah, look, we have seen some of the comments in the chat about Jaheim White and whether or not he would be a possible candidate to transfer to Texas. Look, right now we don't know. Now he has kind of gone out on an Instagram Live and said, "Hey, I'm hitching my wagon to Coach Scott. You know, where he goes, I go." We've yet to really see, of course, until the spring portal window opens up, whether or not that's going to be a possibility. We have, however, this winter, Jeff, kind of theorized maybe running back's a spot you take another body for, because again, look, CJ Baxter dinged up, Christian Clark dinged up. You'd like to see that growth with Jarrett Gibson in terms of ball, security. What's the next step for him as a pass protector as well? What does Trey Wisner look like with another year of weight room development as well? But I'll say this about Jaheim White. He's a 2-year guy. He's from Pennsylvania. Coach Scott found him out of the Pennsylvania. He's only 5'7", so smaller back, but he's rushed for 842 and 870 the last 2 years as a true freshman and a true sophomore. The kid can go average 7.7 and 5.7 yards per attempt as well. Really, really electric back. If he does enter the portal, I would be pretty surprised. But hey, heck of a football player. That's a guy that you just get the rock to, and you'll see what he can do. But I'll take this question from Burnt Orange Horn. I wonder when Chad Scott arrives in Austin. I think right now, with the hiring still pretty fresh, this weekend, maybe Sunday's a safe bet, maybe a little week after that, because again, these coaches are still trying to get back onto the ground, back in Austin after what was a 72-hour vacation for most of them. You don't get a lot of time. So the new hire, it's still fresh. Try to get these guys back on the campus, and of course, let Torrey Becton's group do their work. But it'll be interesting. I'm, Coach, really interested to hear and see how Sarkisian adopts and adapts his offense the way that PK and Johnny Nansen kind of meshed theirs together. I'm not going to say it's going to be a complete overhaul, but look, we've seen bits and pieces of a Brennan Marion offense since his time in Austin. We've seen some, maybe some revert back to Sarkisian with the, let's put the 6-man offensive line away. We don't really need to go to the 2-back or that jumbo set all too often. Let's spread them out, stick in 11 personnel. But what would you like to see added outside of maybe some of that jumbo 11 with a fullback or a sniffer in the, kind of the form of a Nick Townsend or Michael Terry III?
I like that. I like the fact that I'm hoping, as you suggested, that bringing Coach Scott in is going to give us fresh ideas, especially with the running game and especially in the red zone. Yeah. And I kind of go along with Rod on that. I like 2-back sets. And another point I remember Rod made, he was talking about as a player, but I can't remember who we were playing against that had a real short running back. But Rod said, we couldn't see him. We couldn't find him. It's the weirdest thing, but you see guys like that sometimes can get lost in there, and a guy who's already got a low center of gravity anyway can get you some extra yards and maybe squirt through a hole. I would like to see Mr. White in the orange and white myself. I think one more guy like him would just really make me feel good about a running back room, especially a guy that's proven. that already knows Coach Scott knows how he works. But I am excited about new ideas coming in. And I wanted to ask this: did he overlap at all with Mac at North Carolina? I wonder.
No, Coach. He was there. He was there with Larry Fedora.
Oh, okay, Larry Fedora. Okay,
Coach, you're the reason why all of these coaches are saying no spring ball. They're saying, I'd like to have him in the orange and white. And they're like, no, we can't show him off at spring ball. We can't have a spring game because of Coach Shipley out here poaching on the roster. But look, heck of a football player. If there for any reason he does enter the portal, I'm with you. Get him in orange and white.
And it's a whole different type of running back that we really don't have right now.
Yeah, that Jaden Blue dynamic.
Right.
Texas doesn't have that right now, and I think that to Shard's choice. I know he said at the Peach Bowl they weren't taking a running back. I mean, they kicked the tires on a couple guys, and I think that's about the extent of it. They kicked the tires. I mean, I think you have to look. Hey, can we upgrade the talent? That's one thing that I love about this staff. They're not shy about. Can we upgrade talent at the position? Kick the tires on a guy. Maybe it's something you pursue. Maybe it's not. But I just don't think there was a running back that fit what they needed in the winter portal window. Now, if Gene White's in there in the spring window, obviously, I think we can all maybe draw conclusions at that point. But anything else is just speculation right now. But this hire, CJ, we talked about it. It's coming at a great time because Chad Scott's going to be able to look at that running back board. Whoever he picks, he's going to end up signing a really good, probably 2-man running back class in this 2026 cycle. So his first class. I mean, it's going to be. I'm not saying it's going to be impossible to miss, and you'll end up with a player. But whether it's Javian Osborne, KJ Edwards, somebody from out of state, whoever it is, whatever the combination is, I think that's probably got Chad Scott as excited as much as anything. That hey, no matter who you take, you're going to get 2 guys that can come in here in 2026. If we talk about the running back position, is one of those where guys typically can make that adjustment early. He's going to get 2 guys that can come in and help Texas right away. So that's got to be exciting for a position coach.
Jeff, what do you think of when we've seen Texas go get 2 running backs in each of the last 3 cycles, right? That's kind of been the norm here. Do you think the personnel or who they target to complement one another will change at all under Coach Scott, or is that just, hey, that's a Sarkisian thing? You gotta have one or the other there.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think that's probably, I'd like to think that's a Sark call, that maybe you want to have a guy who fits more of the traditional tailback role, and then have a guy kind of like a Jaden Blue that, hey, we can use him. He's kind of more your all-purpose type guy. Yeah. I think the one trait, I think if you're going to play running back for Sark, and this is going to be, something that Chad Scott's going to have to evaluate and look at when he's looking at backs. If you're going to play running back for Sark, you better be able to not only catch the football, but do something with it and be a threat in the passing game. Sark loves throwing the football to the running backs, and you look at how he's gotten, whether it's been Bijan, Roshan, Jaden Blue, Jonathan Brooks, whoever it's been, he puts those guys in a position to where they can make things happen after the catch, and we've seen the running backs be a really big part of the explosive part of the passing game. So I just think above, we can talk about skill set all we want, CJ, but I think that's got to be the number one prerequisite, is you better be a threat in the passing game with as much as you can do with the pony package and your 2 back sets, as much as they can go empty. They got to have that kind of guy.
Yeah, I asked that because looking back at some of the guys that were developed and recruited by Chad Scott up at West Virginia, look, CJ Donaldson was actually a converted tight end who moved to running back and played right around 230, 235. He's now at Ohio State. He had a pretty significant couple of years with West Virginia, dealt with some injuries as well. But look, we just mentioned Jaheim White. Yeah. Look, Coach, those names. But Jaheim White, he 5'7", 160. So the complete other side of the spectrum at the running back position. It'll be interesting to see who gives, who takes, what kind of adaptations are made in that running back search. But to your point, all sorts of really talented options this year, not just in-state, which, look, Jonathan Hatton's a true D1, running back waiting to find a home out of Cibolo Steele, who was previously a part of the Oklahoma class. And I talked to somebody the other day who said, he decommitted. He's just kind of fallen by the wayside. But we talked about the Dave Campbell top 10 prospects in the state for running backs. He's one of them. And you don't hear a whole lot about him so far. So it is worth the conversation in my eyes. It'll be interesting to see how that kind of plays out in 26, 27, 28 with the new running back hire. I will get to this quick super chat real quick. We'll start to pivot more towards the team moving forward in 2025 as well. I got a few questions for you guys we'll get to from the chat. First, super chat from Jack Lala right here. Great show. What do you each think is the biggest weakness going into next year? That's a great question. Jeff, you want to take this one?
Biggest weakness going into next year. I think there's kind of 1A and 1B for me on offense. I'll look at both sides of the ball. On offense, I think it's the unknown variable of the fact that this offensive line hasn't played together. And you got a lot of new faces, and that group takes a lot of time for that group to come together. So that's a concern for me. Also, do you have a guy in that receiver room that can take the top off the defense? Because we know Arch's strength is probably going to be the deep ball. You've got guys. We know DeAndre Moore shown he can win on the outside. We know Ryan Wingo can win on the outside, but I think you need a speed dynamic that strikes fear into the heart of a secondary, that they've got to, hey, so-and-so's in the game. We better be on not just our back pedal. We better be turning and running and not letting that guy get behind you. So those are two things. And then on defense, replicating the production of Alfred Collins, Vernon Broughton, Bill Norton, Jermaine Lole. Look, you're not going to have another guy that's as athletic and does what Alfred Collins can do. You may not have a guy that's as good of a natural pass rusher as Vernon Broughton, but those guys were very different from Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy, who were different from Moro Ojomo and Keandre Coburn. So just as long as, if you can kind of hold serve and kind of money ball it at defensive tackle, that to me is the concern. You don't want to get into a situation where you line up and teams feel like, yeah, we can run right at Texas, where teams have been real hesitant to do that the last 3 years. So you don't want to get into that spot. So I just think try to figure out what's going to work at interior D line.
Coach, do you have anything that stands out in terms of a true weakness this far?
No, I don't like that word weakness. I would feel better calling it a concern.
Okay.
I don't know that when you're recruiting 4- and 5-star guys that, you better not have a weakness. You might have a concern, a development or whatever, but yeah, I agree with Jeff. I think the offensive line is I think it will happen. I think Kyle Flood is as good as there is, in my opinion. And this spring will give them good time just to work on coming together as a unit, like Jeff said. That is those guys have to work 5 as 1. They have to work together as a unit. They have to know what the others are thinking. And it's just going to take some time. I think we have the talent. I think it's going to be good. I'm worried about a running game, which is a big part because of the offensive line, but also because we haven't necessarily figured out exactly how we're going to use who we have in that arsenal. It's kind of like I see these guys out there playing frisbee golf, and I stop and talk to them. Hey, what do you need 5 frisbees for? You just one frisbee. No, it depends on what your situation is. Well, I would love to have a running back room like that.
Yeah.
Or in a golf bag, do we need a sand wedge? We need a 3-iron, whatever. And being able to utilize our running backs in situations that will be more beneficial to us, because with CJ Baxter's loss, it really threw us for a loop last year of who we were going to be as a running football team, in my opinion. And so, and yeah, I wouldn't call our receiver room a weakness. Maybe a little concern, but you really get spoiled when you have those guys, Jeff, as you say, that could take the top off the defense. That spoils you really, really fast. And I would love to have another guy like X, or, we've had several speedsters out there, but just a guy that can really, when he takes off and blows by a DB, everybody goes, whoa,
yeah.
that is so helpful for an offense, as you can imagine, because those people require attention. You have to know where they are at all times. I don't know that we're close, but I don't know that we quite have that guy. And yeah, defensive line, the front, it's always going to be, when you're replacing guys, it's always going to be a concern, but again, I think we have some very talented guys there, and, give them a little time. I would also like to just add this. Doesn't really have anything to do with Jack's question, but just in terms of, I forgot what I was going to say. It happens to us when you get in your 60s like that.
And it's the weekend, basically.
It'll circle back around. These thoughts come, and I'll grab a hold of it next time it comes by.
Whenever it happens, Coach, interrupt us, because I do want to get to this. I was wondering if this was your burner right here, Coach. This comment from Cisco Diaz, not a weakness, but a worry. So
yes.
More along that slide. Look, special teams, it was a rocky road this past year. No one can deny that, whether it be kicking, whether it be punting, whether it be coverage, whether it just be getting the ball back from a punt. There were times where Texas didn't look great, special teams. I've heard great things about Jack Boomeister, the new punter from Utah. He was a former all-conference guy over in the Big 12. Really good things so far about his acclimation to the team. Still going to be a bit of a battle between Burt Auburn, Will Stone. I'm not sure. I haven't heard anything behind the scenes that leads me to think there's going to be a third kicker in the mix or somebody brought in. So we'll see, of course, whenever the spring portal does open up. Because again, I'm of the mindset that you just don't ever need to recruit punters and kickers ever again out of high school. There's just no reason for it. Go get a kid out of the portal every single year. Go get the MAC all conference guy. And he's your guy for the next year or two if you have him. If you don't have him, well then, hey, the MAC's going to produce another all-conference guy the next year. Go get him again. It's much easier to say than obviously enact on, but that's just kind of where I've been. Just go get a guy that's proven he can do it right now. But I will say this. I don't know who are going to be the gunners. I don't know who's going to be the big-time sprinters down kickoff. Of course, that's kind of what you kind of get a glimpse in for spring football. We'll see how in-depth they go with that this year. But we have another comment here. Jeff, I'll toss this to you. Coach, I'd like to get your thoughts too, because it is a wide receiver question from Javon Patel. We've talked about the circle of trust previously. And last year it started with 5, maybe even flirted with 6 a little bit, dropped to 4, and then by the end of the year, I think it was even just about 3. Right? It was just the 3 guys on the field. Matthew Golden got hurt. It was really just 2. But right now, guys, who's in your circle of trust? We know there's 2.
That's where it ends for me right now. You got 2 proven commodities, DeAndre Moore and Ryan Wingo. Everybody else. That's what makes the wide receiver position battle fascinating for me, because you've got the 3 returning guys, Aaron Butler, Freddie DeBose, and Parker Livingstone, the 3 guys that didn't play last year, with the 3 newcomers, Dalen McCutcheon, Jamie French, and Khalil Lockett. Those 6 guys are probably competing for Coach, probably 3 spots. So it should be, Chris Jackson's room should be very lively in terms of competition this spring, this summer, and then going into camp.
Does no pads hurt that in the spring? No pads?
I mean, obviously you'd like those guys to have some contact, because there has to be there's a level of physicality to playing wide receiver, whether it's getting off the jam on, but blocking is a very underrated part of playing wide receiver that we don't talk about. And when you get a Jordan Whittington, a guy that's a really good blocking receiver, it really makes you appreciate them, because we see what happens when I'll never forget that TCU game in 23 where Jonte Cook caught a screen pass and Xavier Worthy missed a block. X is great at a lot of things. Blocking is not necessarily his forte, and you saw it really makes you appreciate a guy that can get it done on the perimeter. From that standpoint, but I think CJ at this point, it's going to be rapport with Arch. It's going to be, those summer 7-on-7 sessions and the throwing sessions those guys are going to have. It's all about building a rapport with Arch. And among those 6 guys, Wingo's already there, Moore's already there. Those 6 guys, who's going to build a rapport with Arch the fastest?
Yeah, I'm not sure who that's going to be either. We talked last week about, the fact, or maybe it was Monday, I'm sorry, Parker Livingstone is a guy who Rod thinks is close if he's not there. And I think, CJ, you've heard a lot of good things about him as well. But I agree with you, Jeff. There's two. There's two there. But, yeah, you've got to have pads. You don't necessarily have to have – I mean, basically, guys, you go out in shorts and shoulder pads, honestly, they're wearing their girdles underneath. They've got their knee pads in, thigh pads. They don't wear knee pads anyway. So, basically, you're in full pads. You have to be working on blocking with those guys. They have to be able to know what it feels like, especially these new guys. At this level, it's a whole different level of blocking, effort, and technique than anything that they've been used to. Now, I caught that sucker as it flew around, and what I was thinking is, what I wanted to mention is, I've heard a lot of good things about Chad Scott and the energy that he brings, on the field and in the room. And wouldn't it be great if at the end of spring ball that our running back coaches go to the media and say, we have a superstar right here. I mean, this guy, I'm not saying he's coach choice, but I don't know that they should say, I didn't see a drop off. They don't want to disrespect their former coach, who's obviously one of the best out there. But I would love to have him to have a great relationship with those guys. And at the end of spring ball, those guys are singing his praises, and maybe get some of those running backs that came out and said they may not come to Texas now, get them back interested in Texas, because this was a good hire.
I don't think you'll find any disagreements in the chat, Coach, because I'm with you too. And again, that's what I heard a lot about Coach Orfe, the new cornerbacks coach from Rutgers. A lot of energy, and he's a guy that works each day to develop his guys on the field. So again, feels like a trend. I know Coach Nanson's like that. Coach Banks has that in him. Coach Flood, of course, if you've ever stood in the corner of a spring or fall camp workout and you hear how he gets after those offensive linemen, right? That's the energy. But at the end of the day, it's all about getting better each day. So a lot of guys just like that on the staff. And that's been a continual trend that we've seen. Kenny Baker, just like that. We heard Vernon Broughton and Alfred Collins speak about that last year. So again, all about developing guys once they get on the campus. Because to your point, Coach, you shouldn't have any weaknesses when you got 4- and 5-star guys littering the roster right now. We only got about 10 more minutes left. There is still one.
Can I add something to what Coach Shipley just said? Because I think that's a great point.
Yeah.
What you just said too, CJ. We've been to enough practices. You can tell when the energy and the emotion and coaches coaching players and teaching players, you can tell when it's authentic and when it's not. And I've seen some Texas assistant coaches over the years that, they might have been, there's been a few here and there that, the energy level wasn't really high. And I'm like, man, if you're going to practice every day, like, you got to have something to break, especially in camp. You need something to break the monotony. You got to have some juice. You need it from your position coach. I've also seen some coaches that lean way too far in the other direction, where it's over cussing and it's too much yelling. And at some point, it's no different than a parent. If you just cuss and rant and rave, at some point they're just going to tune you out, and it just becomes white noise on the outside. So, but I've been impressed, especially as Sark has made different hires. You go watch Kenny Baker work with his guys. You watch Johnny Nansen, even watching, the guys that were on the original staff, Blake Gideon and all these other guys. I mean, you can see that there's teaching being done, and it's being done the right way, and coaches are making use of their time. Coach Shipley, I know we've all seen practices where, you can look over the drill, and like I said, whether it's no juice or it's just a lot of hollering and screaming, you're like, well, I hear a lot, but I don't see a whole lot getting done. No, that's what I like about Sark and his staff. There's work getting done when they're on the practice field.
Yeah, and the relationship with the players is everything.
Yep.
You can take a butt chewing from a coach that loves you and spends a lot of time with you off the field better than you can a guy who doesn't even really acknowledge you when you walk by him in the hall. And trust me, I've seen that.
Mm-hmm.
I have seen that, and it makes me want to throw up when I saw that with one particular previous coach at the University of Texas. But that really, and it sounds like when you've got White saying, "Hey, I'm going with this guy," because, and so obviously he's coached him in a way that he wants to continue to grow and develop under him, but be around him. There's some guys, I know he's going to help me grow and develop, but I can't stand the man, So, again, it is a theme that we see with Sark. I mean, with the hires he's made.
Yeah.
That those guys are they're a player's coach, and but still get you to play at the optimum level that you're capable of playing.
Yeah, and that's why you've seen top three number one classes being stacked. That's why you've seen back-to-back years of double-digit guys sent to the combine. Texas sending 14 next week as well, and what will likely kind of breed into a second straight year of double-digit draft picks on top of that. So it's all kind of working together. There's some sort of term for the wheel that just keeps going. I don't know what it is, but that's kind of where we're seeing the Sarkisian Texas program. And as we mentioned on Monday, this is the good times right now. It's about to be the great times with Arch Manning atop of the helm. So enjoy this, Texas fans. We got a couple more topics I want to get to, a couple more comments. But, Jeff, real quick, a final word from our sponsor, South Point Dodge.
Yes.
The winning drive.
Yes, indeed, CJ. South Point Dodge. Texas football fans, you can score an easy extra point when you get to the point at South Point Dodge. South Point Dodge has over 600 vehicles in stock, including a great selection of Ram 1500, 2500, and 3500. Whatever your truck needs, South Point Dodge is the one-stop shop. So score big today at South Point Dodge. Come see us on IH-35 in South Austin or at southpointdodge.com. Get to the point at South Point Dodge. South Point Dodge is Austin's automotive everything. Right now, shop over 50 Ram 2500s. All marked down with huge savings. South Point Dodge is always stocked with a great selection. So again, come see them. I-35 in South Austin or at southpointdodge.com. Get to the point with our friends at South Point Dodge.
Big time. Thank you, Jeff. And again, thank you, South Point Dodge, for sponsoring this Thursday edition of the Winning Drive. Big news there, but also big news yesterday, at least of what we might have thought was big news, was Bill Norton's announcement that the plan is moving on. And I don't know the exact verbiage in that tweet, but it sounded like he was returning for another year. Fortunately, or should I say unfortunately, he will be headed to his professional career. I confirmed with him that, hey, maybe that was a little bit more of a misleading quote in that tweet, but he will not be returning. I know that we had some comments on the board earlier this morning about Bill Norton. He is out of eligibility there. And so, again, he will be moving on. He'll be preparing for the pro day and the rest of his NFL career moving forward. But going back to the conversation that we had earlier about winter conditioning, speaking more so on the importance of Coach Becton and his staff, obviously, Coach Becton returning, big news for Longhorns. I wanted to get to this question from Brian Berg. During the winter conditioning time, do players get together after classes? Do they practice a 7-on-7 or anything like that? Coach, you've been a part of these workouts. You've been a part of these, kind of periods of the year where there's just not a lot going on outside of the morning workouts. How does that happen? Is it just quarterback gets the keys and organizes everything?
That's the way it used to be. The way when I was there, the coaches and a few select players had keys to the bubble, and they would go get extra work in. But, it's just that scares me a little bit because guys don't maybe understand when you have a really tough workout in the morning and you've just really crushed your legs and your core and everything, it may not be real smart to go out and be running full speed and cutting and all that, because that's where a lot of those sports hernia, they call them sports hernias, that came in, because I know it happened to Jackson. It happened to two other guys, I think, that they could never get over it, because what they were doing is they were crushing their core and working real hard in their legs. Then they'd go out and do these really fast, almost just change of direction, really hard, and they started ripping themselves, in the growing area, and it wouldn't heal. And so I just use that as an example. You got to be careful, but yes, I don't know if they still have a key to the bubble or not, but there's no doubt those guys get together and throw and work on stuff on their own. Absolutely.
Yeah, hopefully not in this weather, right? I mean, it's
in the bubble.
It's about 20 degrees. Yeah, I guess the bubble's there for a reason. So for folks in Austin, especially if you're looking forward to going to the baseball games this weekend, softball games, look, I'm hoping it heats up sometime soon, because this weather stinks, man. I was in Chicago. I thought that was a bad idea last week to go up there and explore the city in the middle of February, and then I get back to Austin. It's the same weather. I'm like, well, what's the difference now? So it hadn't been very fun.
I tell you what, though, piggybacking off what Coach just said, when the practice facility is done, that thing's going to be a godsend. It may not sound like a big deal, but when you don't have to walk, uphill by the LBJ library or drive over and find a place to park to get to the bubble, you can walk from the dorm to the practice facility, like literally across the street. That's gonna be a game changer for guys that had quarterbacks that had the keys to the facility.
Are you gonna miss the big yellow buses taking everybody over there, Jeff?
It's neither here nor there for me. I'm sure there will be some guys in that locker room that aren't going to miss the getting on the yellow dog and going to practice. But yeah, it's neither here nor there for me.
I will say, one thing I will miss about Tashard Choice and Coach Jeff, I'm sure y'all have seen it when y'all go out there for practices at Denny's. He's a guy that hike from Moncrief to Denny's. It's not a short hike, and it's all uphill from Moncrief. And it was always one of the things that I kind of, I don't want to say adored, but I was like, okay, I got the mental note of it. Coach Choice would just sit there and steady jog no matter what. Every single day, always in a hoodie, no matter the temperature, getting out there, setting the example, being the energy guy. And of course, to each their own. There are coaches on golf carts. Some would take the bus. Many would drive over in other vehicles, whatever. Coach Choice and Coach Williams, I believe, his running backs assistant analyst, he always just running out there on a jog to set the tone. I always appreciated that because I think that would trickle down to his room, and I think we see that at times with a Trey Wiesner in his game.
Hey, the coach that always worried me was Bo Davis because Bo would wear I'm not talking about a long sleeve dry fit. He'd wear it's 110 degrees and he's wearing a sweatshirt. I'm like, man, I hope he's getting his electrolytes because that could be a heat stroke. But no,
that's a coaching thing. I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't either. CJ, have you and Jeff got parking tickets before?
Oh, yeah.
That's the worst. That is the worst. You got to try to get there early enough to get one of those metered spots, so you can.
Coach, don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody. But I keep an old parking ticket in my console. So if I'm in a bad spot, I just throw it under the sleeve of my windshield wiper, and I go on. And I act upset whenever I come back.
What's funny about that, Coach, is the first couple tickets I got all up in arms about it, and then when I heard that Mac once got a ticket that he couldn't get out of, I'm like, if the head football coach is getting tickets he can't get out of, the rest
they
of us
don't mess around. UT parking, they do not mess around. Sometimes I accuse those guys of working on commission.
Yeah. By the weekend, that's basically what it feels like. You walk by and you see ticket. So,
CJ,
I make sure to
we
have
had lots of comments about my jacket.
Oh, that is sweet.
Bobby asked me, where did you get that jacket? Well, I actually got it from Texas, from the DFO, but it is a 40 Acres brand. And it's I get compliments everywhere I go. It's cool. It's not real heavy, but it's 40 Acres brand. I don't know anything about them, but I know that's what the UT staff gets, and I'm digging it. I wear it all the time.
Yeah, it's funny, Coach. I'll see, Sark will have a new jacket or vest or whatever on the sideline, and I'll see people on Twitter, where can I get that? I'm like, you ain't getting that because that came to Moncrief and nowhere else.
Yeah, short supply on those, and look, that's one of the perks. You don't get many vacation days, but hey, you got the sweet gear that you rock on the sideline, so that's part of it. Guys, I know it's been a busy week for the football team leading up to today, but moving forward, also some big games on the 40 Acres. Of course, basketball, women's and men's back in action this weekend. Of course, I mentioned baseball. Hopefully we'll get a series off against Dartmouth this weekend. And then softball, looking to extend what was, I believe, an 11-0 start to the season. Number one team in the country for Mike White. They'll be back in action as well. I don't know if they'll be able to duplicate what they did last week, where I think they went 12-1 in true games. But hopefully that will be something Jeff and I get to talk about on Monday with the Longhorn Weekly. On top of that, swimming, golf, tennis also in action. So a lot of sports that you can kind of indulge with as we talk about this kind of dry period on the football field. Any last parting words, Jeff, before we head out of here?
Baseball time change. It's 1:00 tomorrow, noon, I believe, or 1:00 tomorrow and Saturday, and then noon on Sunday. So a little bit of a time change. I think Burn Orange Horn in the chat gets the last word because that post just sums up, that comment sums up exactly how I think we all feel about parking and transportation services on the 40 acres. Says UT Parking cannot post legible signs and the defendant cannot appear at a hearing. Soviet legal system. It is unjust. We've all been there. And yeah, that's you know it's bad when athletes, coaches, professors, everybody's in agreement that you're by far the worst part of the university is parking transportation services.
That means they're doing their job.
Yeah.
I hope part of that's
unfortunately for us, coach.
Yeah.
Part of that, hopefully, going to the one fund. I'm not sure how that money's divided up, but it was funny watching the Missouri-Alabama basketball game last night. The Missouri basketball coach, before about 8 seconds left, told his student section, hey, do not storm the court. We're up by 14. We're beating the number 3 team in the country. Do not storm the court. You got on the public service, the PA. And afterward, they asked him, they said, Coach, why'd you feel the need to do that? And he goes, look, we need that money for NIL. So, again, I don't know if that's actually how that money should be divvied up or not, but hopefully some of those parking ticket money, dollars are headed straight to the NIL and the one fund. But that will do it for today. Coach Jeff, thank you very much. To the man Matthew behind the scenes, thank you as well. I know it's Thursday, but basically it's the weekend tomorrow. So everybody enjoy the weekend. We'll get back to you. All news, updates, everything else on ontexasfootball.com. Come be a part of the community. We got you covered. But for today, y'all have a good one. Welcome.